After a refreshing 2-day getaway, my husband and I decided to head back home, but not before picking up some souvenirs for John and his mother, Mary. Instead of going straight home, I thought it would be nice to drop off the gifts at Mary's place first since it was on the way. I had already let John know we were stopping by, but as we pulled up to the house, an eerie stillness hung in the air. Despite the darkening sky, not a single light illuminated the windows, and an unsettling silence enveloped the property. "Something doesn't feel right," I muttered, a sense of unease creeping over me. "Yeah, I wonder what's going on." "Watch your step," my daughter cautioned as we carefully navigated the snowy path to Mary's front door, mindful not to slip on any hidden patches of ice. As we entered the house, the atmosphere felt charged with a recent human presence, yet the dimly lit interior revealed a disarray of scattered belongings, as if someone had hastily fled the premises. "Mom, it's kinda creepy," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I know, honey. Do you want to wait outside?" I asked, but she shook her head, determined to stay by my side as we hesitantly ventured further into the house.
"Hello! It's Emily. Is anybody home?"
I called out, my voice echoing through the empty rooms, but no response came. We made our way to the bedroom where Mary would typically be resting, and as we pushed open the door, a biting chill greeted us, far colder than any indoor space should be. There, in the far corner of the room, lay Mary, her face ashen and her body wrapped tightly in a blanket.
"Oh my God! Mary!"
I gasped, rushing to her side and desperately trying to rouse her, but her skin was frighteningly cold to the touch. "I'm Emily. Your average housewife juggling the demands of raising a child and working a part-time job. My husband, John, is an office worker at a large corporation, often putting in long hours late into the night. Our daughter, Jessica, is a responsible high school student who always goes out of her way to help me, whether it's preparing her own lunch or assisting with household chores. Just down the street lives John's mother, Mary, a woman in her 70s. A few years ago, she fell ill and has been bedridden ever since, leaving me to care for her for the past 5 years. Balancing my part-time job with regular visits to Mary's house to provide care has been incredibly challenging. A responsibility that should have fallen on John's shoulders. But with his demanding work schedule and our comfortable financial situation, I never complained. Besides, from the moment I married John, Mary had always treated me with such kindness, as if we shared a special connection. When Jessica was born, she stepped in to offer guidance and support when I felt overwhelmed and unsure, even becoming a playmate for our little girl. For that, I am eternally grateful. So, I quietly continued to care for her, driven by a deep sense of obligation to repay her, even if only in some small way, for all that she had done for our family. Even so, I had hoped John would at least help out on his days off. "You're off today, right? I was wondering if you could help with Mary's care," I tentatively asked him. But his response was always the same. "Sorry, I can't. I'm really busy. I have to go into work today, even though it's a holiday. So please, take care of Mom for me." He never made any effort to assist with her care. To be fair, he was working almost non-stop, just as he said. With a schedule like that, you'd think he'd collapse from exhaustion, but John always came home late at night in high spirits. Seeing him like that, I figured he must really love his job. I didn't know the specifics of what he did, but I did receive a call from a woman named Sarah once. She said she was a colleague of my husband's, and when John heard about it, he rushed back to work even though he had just gotten home. If he was working that hard without complaint, I couldn't bring myself to demand that he please help with the caregiving. So, I never grumbled in front of my family and focused on providing devoted care while managing the household chores. I'm so sorry about this. If I wasn't in this condition, I wouldn't be causing you so much trouble, Emily. Mary would apologize every time she saw me. It's all right. We're family, aren't we? If it gets to be too much, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Oh, don't be silly. It's no trouble at all. Thank you, dear.
I meant every word, and she seemed to be speaking from the heart as well. To avoid putting any extra strain on me, she would try to change positions on her own, doing what she could to make caregiving easier for me. As I was tending to Mary, the door to her house opened, and Jessica walked in.
Mom, I'll take over from here. You should get some rest,
she said, immediately trying to help with the caregiving.
Now, hold on a minute. Don't you have entrance exams to study for? But Mom, you were feeling dizzy the other day. You really should take a break.
No matter what I said, Jessica wouldn't listen. She pushed me aside and started taking care of Mary. Now Jessica's involved too. I'm so terribly sorry for all the trouble, Mary said, looking even more apologetic.
Don't worry about it. Actually, I'd love to hear more stories about the old days.
When Jessica was little, John and I were so busy that Mary often looked after her. That's why, even now, Jessica adores her grandmother. So, in between studying for her exams, she actively helps out with the caregiving. Normally, I should be telling her to focus on her studies, but as Jessica pointed out, I had been feeling fatigued these past few days. I decided to gratefully accept my daughter's kindness.
All right, I'll take a short break. Let me know if anything comes up. Mary, I hope that's okay with you. Got it. I'll call you if we need anything.
I'm sorry about this. Thank you, Jessica. I headed to the bedroom and laid down. Almost immediately, I felt my consciousness drifting away.
Just 20 minutes. No, I'll rest for 30 minutes. Then, I'll switch with Jessica,
I thought to myself as I drifted off to sleep. In the end, I slept for nearly an hour, not just 30 minutes. This was my life now. My body was exhausted, but I never considered myself unhappy. Even though he didn't help out much, John was working really hard at his job, Jessica was a kind girl, and Mary was a wonderful person. I had no intention of complaining, and I didn't think this lifestyle would continue forever. Mary's health was visibly declining, and both Jessica and I could sense that she didn't have much time left. So, to ensure we had no regrets, I wanted to focus on her care for now. Then, one day, something surprising happened. When John came home, he said,
Emily, I got these from work,
and handed me some travel vouchers.
Oh my, what are these for? Did you do something good? My boss at work gave them to me. I guess it's his way of telling me to take a break sometimes. As if he doesn't know how busy I am. But that's great, isn't it? Let's go.
Yay! Let's go on a trip. Jessica chimed in, having overheard our conversation. When I said that, John's expression turned somber as he shook his head.
I can't. It's impossible for me to go. But it would be a waste to throw them away, so why don't you two go? You should take a break too, every once in a while.
I was taken aback when I heard that. He had never spoken such kind words to me before. Of course, I wanted to go on the trip, but I had some concerns. I'd love to, but there's Mary's care to think about.
I'll handle that. I really should be the one looking after Mom, anyway.
Jessica and I couldn't help but exchange glances. We were happy that John was offering to do this, but we were worried about leaving Mary's care to him when he wasn't very experienced. Jessica seemed to share my concerns and asked,
"Dad, are you sure? You haven't done it much before."
John seemed irritated as he scoffed.
"Don't underestimate me. I can handle something like this."
Putting on a brave front. Hey, maybe we should forget about the trip. It could be tough if something happens, I began to say.
"You guys are so annoying."
John suddenly exploded in anger.
"What's the deal? I'm trying to be nice here. Do you really have that little faith in me? You think I'm that unreliable? Well, do you? Spit it out."
I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I stammered.
"We didn't mean anything by it,"
Jessica added, both of us cowering in the face of his outburst. Seeing us so frightened, John smiled, seemingly satisfied.
"That's what I thought. There's no need to worry. It's only for one night, anyway. It's not like I'm telling you to go on a trip around the world."
When he put it that way, we couldn't argue.
"Well, then,
since we have the chance, why don't we go?" Something about the way John was so adamant about us taking this trip didn't sit right with me. But not wanting to anger him further, we decided to go. The destination was a tourist spot not too far from here, and we were able to stay at a fairly nice hotel. I was worried about Mary, but John wasn't a child, so I figured he'd manage somehow. If anything happened, he'd contact us, and we had a way to get back quickly. Around that time, a cold wave had brought heavy snowfall, turning the entire landscape into a beautiful winter wonderland. Jessica seemed to be enjoying herself, but being the diligent girl she was, she had brought her study materials to the room. We walked through the snow-covered streets, enjoyed delicious meals, and had a wonderful time. After 2 days, feeling completely refreshed in both body and mind, we bought souvenirs for John and Mary and decided to head back. We could have gone straight home, but since Mary's house was closer, I thought I'd drop off her souvenir first. I had let John know in advance that we were heading to Mary's place, but when we arrived, there was no sign of anyone. It was already getting dark, but not a single light was on, and an eerie stillness hung in the air. Something seems off, I murmured uneasily.
"Yeah, I wonder what's going on. Watch your step,"
Jessica replied as we trudged through the snow, careful not to slip on any ice, and opened the front door to Mary's house. Inside, there was a lingering sense that someone had been there recently, but it was dark and objects were strewn across the floor. It looked as if someone had left in a hurry. "Mom, it's kinda creepy," Jessica whispered.
"I know. Do you want to wait outside?"
However, Jessica refused, so the two of us cautiously entered the house.
"Hello! Are you here? It's Emily!"
I called out in a loud voice, but there was no response. We slowly made our way further inside and opened the door to the room where Mary would likely be sleeping. It was so cold, it hardly felt like we were indoors. Looking towards the back of the room, we saw Mary wrapped in a blanket, her face deathly pale.
"Oh my God! Mary!"
I gasped, rushing to her side and trying to rouse her, but her body was frighteningly cold. Still, she was breathing faintly and let out a groan in response to my calls.
"Jessica! Call an ambulance!"
I shouted to my daughter, who stood frozen in shock by the door. Glancing around the room, I noticed that, for some reason, the window was open. No wonder it was so cold. I quickly closed the window, turned on the heater, and wrapped the clothes I was wearing around Mary's body.
"Mary, it's going to be okay. Help is on the way,"
I reassured her. Just as I said those words, I heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance.
What? They're here already?
I marveled.
No way.
Jessica muttered in disbelief. As the sirens grew louder, they stopped right in front of Mary's house. Paramedics immediately entered through the front door.
Paramedics. Is everyone all right?
One of them called out. Hearing their voice, I felt a wave of relief wash over me.
Oh, thank goodness. We're in here. Please hurry.
I shouted back. The paramedics quickly made their way to the room and began treating Mary. This looks like hypothermia. We need to transport her immediately. And you are? One of them asked, turning to me.
I'm Emily, her daughter-in-law. And this is my daughter, Jessica.
I explained. I see. Well then, let's have your daughter Jessica accompany us. Is that all right? The paramedic suggested, eyeing me suspiciously for some reason. A sense of unease began to creep over me. That's fine, but why? I asked, puzzled by his request. I'll explain everything. A new voice chimed in. A man in a suit entered the room and showed me his police badge. The police? What's going on? We'll take care of the transport then. We'll leave the rest to you. The paramedic said, turning to the officer. Mom. Jessica looked at me, her expression on the verge of tears. I had no idea what was happening, but I reminded myself to stay strong.
It's okay, Jessica. I'll be fine. You go and stay with Mary.
Jessica nodded and climbed into the ambulance, which headed off to the hospital. Now, would you mind coming down to the station with me? The officer asked. I was shocked to hear him mention the police station. I never thought I'd hear a line like that outside of a TV drama, especially when I couldn't recall doing anything wrong.
Wait a minute. Why is this happening?
We received a call from your husband, John. He said his wife was trying to kill his mother. And when we arrived, this is what we found. Hearing his explanation, I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. If, God forbid, something happened to Mary, would I be considered the culprit?
That's not true. There's no way. There must be some mistake. Please, investigate properly.
I pleaded desperately, but he simply sighed, looking annoyed. That's why we need you to come down to the station, he said. In the end, unable to resist, I found myself being led into a police car. I had lived an honest life up until now, and it never crossed my mind that I'd find myself in a situation like this. As I gazed out the window, overcome with despair, I saw the colorful reflections of traffic lights on the snow-covered ground. Suddenly, I caught sight of children playing in the snow and couldn't help but shed a tear. The winter landscape that I had enjoyed during our trip now felt incredibly cold and harsh. Thinking about what lay ahead, a sudden fear gripped me. I could picture myself being featured on the news. The woman on your screen now is the suspect, Emily. Emily was arrested yesterday evening on suspicion of attempting to murder her bedridden mother-in-law. If that happened to me, what would become of Jessica? As the daughter of a criminal, her chances of getting into college, let alone her entire future, would be ruined. But I was innocent. As these thoughts raced through my mind, my heart began to pound faster, and I felt an overwhelming urge to flee. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I desperately tried to keep myself together. If I did something rash now, it would be like admitting I was the culprit. If they investigated properly, they'd surely realize I was innocent in no time. So, for now, I had no choice but to cooperate. The police car swayed as it slowly made its way through the snowy streets. Finally arriving at the police station, I was immediately taken to an interrogation room. Now, explain to me. What have you been doing up until now?
I was on a trip. Just my daughter and me. We got back this evening.
Is there anyone who can corroborate that?
We stayed at a hotel, so if you ask them, they should be able to confirm it.
I tried to maintain a composed demeanor. If I appeared too flustered, that alone might raise suspicions. Did your husband usually take care of his mother?
I've been the one caring for her this whole time. My husband only looked after her these past 2 days.
I see. We'll look into that.
What about my husband? How is he doing?
Actually, his current whereabouts are unknown.
What? Why?
Hearing that John was missing, I grew anxious. What on earth could have happened to him? We have a search underway, so I'm sure he'll turn up eventually.
So, what's going to happen to me?
Unfortunately, we'll need you to stay in a holding cell tonight.
You can't be serious. I haven't done anything.
That may be so, but we have to consider the worst-case scenario. You're still a suspect. If we release you, there's a chance you could destroy evidence. I was overcome with despair. They were treating me like a full-fledged criminal. Was I going to be sent to prison without even being allowed to go home? In the end, I spent that night in a holding cell. Naturally, I wasn't permitted to contact anyone on the outside. Was Mary okay? What had become of Jessica? These thoughts consumed me, and I couldn't get a wink of sleep. The following day, the detective from before came to see me. Sorry to keep you waiting. Your innocence has been proven, so you're free to go. With those words, I was allowed to leave.
Thank goodness. Thank you so much.
We were able to confirm your story with the hotel you stayed at. Your daughter cooperated with us as well. As we walked down the hallway, I chatted with him about various things.
So it was her that proved my innocence.
That's right. We were also able to confirm that you and your family had been providing care on a regular basis through interviews with a care manager and your neighbors.
I see. And what about my husband?
When I asked, he hesitated for a moment before simply saying, "Well, we still haven't located him yet." While it was clear that John had been at Mary's house, why he had left her unattended for such a long time remained a mystery. Stepping outside, I found Jessica and the female care manager waiting for me.
Jessica! Mom!
It had only been a day, but it felt like we hadn't seen each other in years.
I heard from the police. You worked so hard to prove my innocence.
Jessica nodded, tears welling up in her eyes.
I did. It was really tough. But it's okay now. And Grandma is going to be all right too. She won't be able to leave the hospital for a while, though.
Hearing that, I felt a profound sense of relief. As long as Mary was safe, that was all that mattered. We decided to head home for the time being. The care manager gave us a ride, and we finally arrived at our house. It seemed Jessica had already brought our luggage over from Mary's place. After saying goodbye to the care manager and sorting through our belongings, I was suddenly hit by an overwhelming wave of exhaustion.
Seriously, what is that man doing? At this rate, I don't even know why we went on this trip.
I'm exhausted too. Let's get some rest. We each laid down, ready to drift off to sleep. It was already past 1 p.m. Having gotten no sleep the night before, I quickly grew drowsy. Just then, the doorbell rang. Startled, I got up and looked at the monitor to see the police officer from earlier standing there. Sorry to bother you so suddenly. I immediately unlocked the front door.
What is it?
Well, the thing is, we've received reports of a suspicious individual believed to be John. It seems he may be armed with a weapon. Armed with a weapon. The moment I heard those words, a chill ran down my spine. We're not entirely sure yet, but as a precaution, we'll be stationing officers around your house. Please refrain from going out unless absolutely necessary. And make sure to keep your doors locked tight. With that, he closed the door. I immediately explained the situation to Jessica, and we checked all the locks in the house. Fortunately, nothing was left open, so we could breathe a small sigh of relief for now. However, not knowing when John might show up at the house, I was once again plunged into the depths of anxiety. Every little sound that I normally wouldn't have noticed, every faint voice from outside, set my body on edge. Naturally, there was no way we could sleep in this situation, so Jessica and I huddled close together, quietly passing the time. Hey, Mom. This is all just a misunderstanding, right? Dad wouldn't do something like that, would he?
Of course not. But we need to be careful.
I didn't want to believe that John would resort to violence either, but there was always the possibility, however slim. To begin with, I had no idea what John was trying to accomplish or why he had tried to pin the crime on me. I couldn't even begin to predict what he might do next. That's why we had to be cautious. If the time came, I would at least make sure to protect Jessica. I squeezed her hand, steeling my resolve. From that point on, time seemed to crawl by at an agonizingly slow pace. As evening gradually approached, my smartphone rang with a call from the police.
Hello?
John was found safe and sound at a hotel a short while ago. He's being questioned at the police station now, so you can rest easy.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank you so much.
I hung up after saying just that.
They found Dad? It seems so. Now we can finally get some proper rest.
Feeling both relieved and utterly exhausted, we promptly fell asleep. We ended up sleeping straight through until around noon the following day. When I woke up, Jessica had already left for school, leaving only a note behind. Around midday, I received another call from the police, and the whole truth came to light. When they apprehended John at the hotel, he was apparently with Sarah, the woman I heard the name once before. I had been under the impression that she was merely John's colleague, but it turns out the two of them had been having an affair for quite some time. He had been lying about working on holidays to secretly meet up with her. While we were away on our trip, John had secretly brought Sarah over to Mary's house. The two of them had apparently been enjoying their night together when John made a huge mistake. In an effort to air out the room, he turned off the heat in Mary's room and even opened the window. However, he got so caught up in his time with Sarah that he completely forgot about it. Mary tried her best to close the window, but in her frail condition, there was nothing she could do but endure the cold. By the time John remembered, she was already cold to the touch, and he panicked, mistakenly thinking she had passed away. That's when he saw my text message saying I was coming to her house, and he decided to pin the crime on me. He called an ambulance, reported it to the police, and then hurriedly packed his bags and fled with Sarah. That's why the house was in disarray when we arrived at Mary's place, and why the ambulance showed up at just the right time. Of course, such a terrible plan was never going to work, and I was released soon after. John had been racking his brain, trying to find a way out of this predicament, but there was nothing he could do. Eventually, the police caught up with him, and the two lovebirds were arrested together. By the way, the report about a suspicious individual wielding a weapon turned out to be someone else entirely, and they didn't even have a weapon on them. It was a troubling situation, but I'm so glad we didn't end up in any real danger. However, after hearing the whole story, I was absolutely furious with John. It wasn't just about him pushing the caregiving responsibilities onto me or having an affair. Of course, those things were unforgivable too, but more than anything, I couldn't forgive him for putting Mary's life at risk. I couldn't bear the thought of continuing to live with a man who would treat his own mother so cruelly. So, I decided to hire a lawyer and go through with divorcing him. That said, since both John and Sarah were arrested for abandoning a dependent resulting in death, the divorce proceedings went smoothly. We finalized the divorce without issue, and I demanded a substantial sum in compensation from both of them. Sarah's parents apologized to us and shouldered the compensation payment from the divorce trial. As for John, in addition to the division of assets, I made sure he paid for Jessica's college expenses and the remaining child support. Their sentences were somewhat lighter since Mary managed to survive, but they still received suspended prison sentences. Naturally, they were fired from their jobs, and with their actions becoming public knowledge, they'll likely have to live a quiet life for the foreseeable future. As for John, not only Mary but his other relatives have also cut ties with him. There's no doubt he'll be spending the rest of his life in solitude. With that, everything was resolved, but so much had happened over the past few months that it was an incredibly busy time. Finally, Mary was cleared to leave the hospital, and the three of us started living together again.
I feel terrible for causing you so much trouble again. I guess I'm tougher than I look,
Mary said, still seeming hesitant about receiving care.
What are you talking about? You don't need to worry about that.
But Emily, you got divorced, didn't you? Doesn't that make me an outsider? You don't need to waste your time on someone like me.
That may be true, but the gratitude I feel for all the support you've given us over the years hasn't changed. We'll be family until the very end. Right, Jessica? Yeah, of course we will. So, Grandma, you can lean on us whenever you need to.
Hearing our words, tears began to stream down her face.
Oh, thank you. I really am a lucky woman. I'm so glad I'm alive.
After that, our days passed peacefully, without any major incidents. Mary's condition stabilized, and Jessica successfully got into college, becoming a university student. I thought our happy life together would continue on like this forever, but that wasn't meant to be. A few years later, Mary's health deteriorated further, and finally, on a warm spring day, she passed away peacefully. Her face looked so serene that I couldn't help but wonder if I'd managed to repay even a little bit of the kindness she'd shown me. We held a funeral and were able to see her off without any issues. John attended the funeral as well, but we didn't speak. As long as he's alive and well somewhere, that's enough for me. As Jessica and I were going through Mary's belongings in her room, we found a will. It seems she had secretly written it, expressing her gratitude to us and leaving us all of her assets. Reading it, Jessica and I quietly shed tears. We were truly glad that we had been able to see her off properly. Mary may be gone now, but we've decided to live happily, for her sake as well as our own. Until just now, I was really wondering if this was the right moment, but it was my husband Bert's words that made up my mind. Standing tall with arrogance, he said,
"Bring me a beer!"
In front of him, I presented the divorce papers.
Let's get a divorce. I've reached my limit.
At the mention of divorce, Bert didn't show any confusion, just a calm face. How can he keep such a face? Am I just being naive? No, that's not it. Bert doesn't believe I would actually go through with the divorce. He thinks it's just a threat. Proof of that is Bert's aggressive response.
Since you're the one bringing this up, you take care of our 6 kids. Don't expect any savings or child support from me.
I've realized that no matter what, Bert always puts himself first. After signing the divorce papers, Bert threw them at me with a laugh, saying, "Here you go. I think I've really been patient until now. I've devoted my precious time to such a person, so nobody would oppose this divorce." Even though I've decided on the divorce, I still feel sad about Bert's selfish words and actions. But this is where it ends. His behavior will cast a shadow over his life from now on. My name is Caddy. I'm a 40-year-old housewife. I used to work as an employee at a certain company, but I quit due to health issues. I met Bert through an introduction from an acquaintance, and we later got married. Bert, who is 10 years older than me, is a very responsible and serious person. That Bert seemed like a wonderful person to me. I thought I could have a fulfilling life with him. Bert also said to me,
"You're a wonderful woman. I want to be with you forever."
There was no lie in his words, and I immediately accepted Bert's proposal. Life with Bert was sheer happiness. Although he wasn't much of a talker, we had very calm moments together. I'm glad I married him. Time passed, and our first child was born.
"Caddy, you did well,"
Bert said, sending me words of appreciation and smiling kindly. That was a peak of happiness, now a fond memory. 2 years after our eldest son was born, our second child came, and a year later, our third. Now we have 6 children. With 6 kids, every day feels like a battlefield. Time flies by in the blink of an eye. Still, life with the kids is fun and full of happiness every day, never without smiles. Except for just one thing.
"Welcome back. Was today busy?"
Yeah. Our eldest son Ethan just graduated from high school this year. He's now working as an employee at a local food manufacturer. We really wanted him to go to college, but he didn't want to. When Ethan was about to graduate from high school, Bert and I suggested he go to college. But he refused, saying he had something he wanted to do. Bert, expecting him to go to college, was furious. The argument between the two began, and the room was filled with a tense atmosphere. Bert has always been uncontrollable once he gets angry. Perhaps because of his serious personality, he demands perfection in everything, even from those around him. Bert seems to lose his temper immediately when things don't go his way. This is no different with his children. That day, an enraged Bert lashed out at Ethan with harsh words, unbecoming of an adult. Eventually, Ethan fell ill from the shock and collapsed right there.
"Ethan, are you okay?" "Bert, that's way too much." "Too much? This kid, see, he won't understand unless you say it like this. Betraying my expectations. He owes his life to me, and he dares to betray me."
Trying to approach Ethan again, Bert was stopped by me clinging onto him from behind.
"Stop it. Let go. It's your coddling that's the cause of all this."
Then Bert turned towards me and raised his hand high. Instinctively, I curled up, closing my eyes tightly. But Bert, shrugging me off, stormed out of the house. Before we married, I never thought Bert had this side to him. Sure, he always demanded perfection and could become verbally harsh when things didn't go as planned or were imperfect, but that was about it. I never imagined it could be this severe. Bert returned home when the children had all gone to bed. Looking somewhat remorseful after cooling down. "Ethan asleep? Sorry about earlier. I just lost it." That's in the past now. But if you're going to apologize to Ethan, not me. He's working hard every day, isn't he? Shouldn't we be supporting him instead? I couldn't forgive Bert's actions. Hardening my heart, I confronted him with harsh words. But then, I realized something. Bert wasn't getting my message. And this became the trigger for our lives to take a turn for the worse. 2 weeks passed. Bert constantly had a scowl on his face, and a heavy atmosphere pervaded our home. The children seemed to notice this too and naturally started avoiding Bert, hardly ever seeing him except at dinner time. This couldn't continue without risking the breakdown of our family.
The kids are scared, and I wish you could show a little more kindness,
I said, only to be met with a sharp glare from Bert.
You're the one telling me this? It's your words and actions that led to this situation. And now you're blaming me? That's rich.
Bert was still holding on to what I had said before.
I'm busy, unlike you, the housewife. Working at a major company is different from what the others do. And you, having lived such a boring life, should recognize that and choose your words more carefully from now on.
Does he think he's the most important just because he works for a major company? Such an attitude is only going to make others see him as a nuisance. He can't see that, which is why he looks down on everyone else, including me. Actually, maybe Bert looks down on me the most. Especially, these last 2 weeks after the incident with Ethan have been particularly bad.
Hey, I come home tired from work. It's the wife's job to offer words of comfort first. Are the kids more important than your husband to you?
That's not it, but...
Wait. Put your clothes on properly.
Even as I spoke with Bert, the children, fresh out of the bath, would run around the room without dressing. Trying to get them dressed was futile. They wouldn't listen.
Are you even listening to me? Be quiet. It's irritating.
Enraged that I prioritized the children over him, Bert swept items off the table in anger. Boxes of tissues and small personal items scattered across the floor. Startled by the unusual noise and scene, the children froze, looking at Bert with fear in their eyes. Ethan, who had been lounging on the sofa in the back living room, noticed the commotion and looked over. An uneasy atmosphere filled the house. But soon, Ethan took all the children to the back room, saying,
"Let's go over there."
My relief that the children were spared was short-lived. Bert grabbed me by the collar, shouting,
"Don't you dare say that again,"
before storming off to the bedroom. It was the first time I felt fear towards Bert. One day, upon returning from work, Bert looked at me and said,
"Isn't it strange? They're supposed to carry my blood, yet how did such failures come to be? Come to think of it, you dropped out, didn't you? That's why we have such failures for children."
Mystery solved. Unbelievable words. How could he call his own children failures? And in a voice loud enough for all the kids to hear. I didn't care what he said about me. The fact he mocked me for being a dropout didn't matter. I could endure that. But I couldn't stand him speaking ill of the children. Especially not from their own parent. However, Bert's contempt continued. If I made dinner, he'd say,
"This is what poor people eat, not something for an elite like me."
Or on another day, he'd complain about the housework not being perfect.
Coming home tired to be greeted by this messy, dirty entrance. You're a housewife, aren't you? Shouldn't it be clean everywhere? Not just the entrance, but the hallways, windows, toilets, baths, everything. What's the reason for not cleaning perfectly? Explain it to me so I can understand.
And he'd say these things intentionally in front of the children. This went on for 2 weeks. Bert seemed to enjoy watching my spirit break little by little.
I can't take this anymore.
The children were sound asleep. Beside them, I was under a blanket, cursing my life. Why did I fall in love with this man? Why did I marry him? The more I thought, the more my heart raced. Tears flowed. Then, it happened. Suddenly, a gentle, somewhat low voice asked, "Are you okay?" I peeked out from under the blanket with a tear-stained face and saw Ethan looking at me with concern. "Mom." "Ethan. I'm sorry." Ethan seemed to understand everything with just that one word. He hugged me without saying a word, gently rubbing my back. Ethan's hands felt so big and warm. When did he grow up to be so admirable? "Mom, you've done a great job." No matter what Bert said, I had endured and tolerated it. Despite being scorned and looked down upon, I had persevered. But it was time to end that. Ethan's words of encouragement helped me make my decision. "Thank you. I'm all right now, so you go back to sleep, Ethan. You have an early day tomorrow." "Okay." Relieved by my words, Ethan returned to his room. Next to me, the children, unaware of Ethan's visit, slept on. Looking at their faces made me question my decision. But there was no turning back now. No, I had to make a decision. But how will we manage to live from here on out? My determination and anguish swirled in my mind. Then, Ethan came back into the room with a document in hand. "Mom, this." "What is this?" I scanned the document from top to bottom, handed to me by Ethan. If this was true, there might be a way out. I felt a sense of possibility. A feeling that it's going to be all right. The next day, I waited for Bert to return from work. But, of course, on such a day, Bert was late due to overtime, not returning even by 7 p.m. I had dinner with the children first, but he still hadn't returned. I was considering whether to bathe the younger children. "I'll do it," said Ethan, offering to take over. He knew what I was planning to do. "Thank you." Eventually, Bert returned around 9 p.m. Looking tired as usual from apparent overtime. "Hey, bring me a beer quick." If you know your husband is coming home tired, you should have the beer ready. How useless can a wife be? I had been wondering if this was the right moment, but Bert's words just now made up my mind. Standing boldly in front of Bert, who demanded a beer, I presented the divorce papers. "What? What's this?" "Let's get a divorce." "I've reached my limit." Bert, faced with the word divorce, didn't show any confusion, just a calm face. How can he remain so composed? Am I just being naive? No, that's not it. Bert doesn't believe I would really go through with the divorce. He thinks it's just a threat. Proof of that, Bert spoke with confidence. "Since you're the one who started this, you take care of the 6 kids. Don't expect any savings or child support from me." It was clear that Bert always put himself first. After signing the divorce papers, Bert threw them at me with a laugh, saying, "Here. I think about how much I've endured until now. No one would oppose this divorce, given all the time I've dedicated to such a person." Even deciding on divorce, Bert's selfishness and attitude brought sadness. But that's as far as it goes. His actions would only cast a shadow over his own life from now on. That night, after confronting Bert with the divorce and while the children and Bert were asleep, I prepared to leave the house with Ethan. Ethan, knowing it would come to this, silently packed and prepared. Thanks to doing it together, we managed to leave the house early in the morning. Bert went to work as usual, but when he returned, no one would be here. That's when he would realize the situation he's in. The new apartment was about an hour's drive away, located a bit away from a residential area in a high-rise building. The children were thrilled the moment they stepped into the room. I never imagined we could live in a place like this. We ended up living in what's called a high-rise due to certain circumstances. All thanks to Ethan. A month has passed since the divorce. Unlike before, I no longer feel unreasonable stress. The children seem happier too. What was the point of our previous life? Life seemed so much more enjoyable, indicating just how awful living with Bert had been. But that's already in the past, and there's no use dwelling on it. Yet, Bert's selfishness wouldn't let me forget. After divorcing Bert and moving to the high-rise, Bert began calling incessantly. Again. I was getting fed up with Bert's calls. The children didn't seem to know who was calling, but as usual, only Ethan seemed to be aware.
From Dad again? Yes, it's been intense lately. I can't ignore it anymore, can I? I can answer it. Mom, you're busy, and you don't have time to deal with Dad, right?
Ethan was right. One of the reasons for moving here was a job opportunity. The company I had worked for before wanted me back. But dealing with Bert was something I had to handle myself.
It's okay. I'll deal with him.
Then, immediately after, a call from Bert came in. Was there something he so desperately wanted to say? It was unusual for him to keep contacting me like this.
Hello? Hey, what's this all about? I wasn't informed about any of this.
So now he noticed?
I was going to say.
Then paused, thinking maybe I should wait and see a bit longer.
You always jump into things and get too heated. Try to be a bit more calm when you speak.
But Bert, far from calming down, only grew more aggressive.
Calm down. You think you can say whatever you want because it's not about you. You've caused a huge mess. That's why you need to explain what the huge mess is. If it's because of me, what exactly has gotten worse? Come on, you're not a child, and you're a big company employee, right? Then explain it clearly so everyone can understand.
Maybe the mention of being a big company employee hit a nerve, as Bert briefly regained his composure, only to quickly lose it again and start on a completely different topic.
Getting cocky, are you? Who do you think has allowed you to live comfortably up to now? It's all thanks to me.
Why does the conversation always veer off in a completely different direction? I had a pretty good idea of what Bert was trying to say. Resigned, I decided to make things clear in a way my husband could understand.
There's a lot I want to say, but... Okay, let me first explain the situation you're in. Why it has come to this. What?
It's tiresome, but expecting anything more from Bert would be a waste of time.
You're trying to say you've been kicked out of the house because we got divorced, right? That's right. It's all your fault.
Yes. We don't need to go into that now.
Just listen to what I have to say.
Really pathetic. To think a 50-year-old can't even listen to others. It felt like I was explaining things to a child, making it as simple as possible.
First, it's not my fault you were kicked out of the house. The rent and living expenses for that house were being paid by Ethan, not you. That can't be true. You were receiving living expenses from me every month, weren't you?
Yes, I did receive them. $100, though.
With 6 children and living in a decent apartment, what kind of husband only contributes $100 a month? If it weren't for Ethan, the rest of the family, excluding you, would be homeless by now. No, that's...
Bert said.
Back in the day, $100 was enough to live on, so you should manage.
Explaining why he only contributed $100 to the household expenses. Naturally, $100 was nowhere near enough, so I reluctantly used my savings from before I was married to scrape by. Then one day, Ethan suddenly handed me some money.
Use this. What? What is this? It's my salary for this month. From now on, I'll support us, so you don't have to worry. Save your money for the younger siblings.
I was moved to tears. Ethan was thinking of the family more than anyone else. Since then, Ethan worked tirelessly every day to support our family. Now, with me divorced and Bert on his own, it was natural that he couldn't pay the rent or the living expenses. After all, neither I nor Ethan were there. If only he realized that this situation was serious, he could have done something about it.
It's because you're too focused on playing around with women that things turned out this way. How do you know that?
Ethan saw you.
He was taken to a restaurant by his coworkers and saw you with a woman he didn't recognize. It was your favorite lady from that high-class club behind the station, right? Apparently, you've been lavishing her with a significant amount of money every month. All this information came from Ethan.
Bert's momentum vanished completely, and he was utterly disheartened. However, my frustration with him was far from over. Just then, he said,
"Help me."
"Excuse me?"
My promotion got canceled. Despite working diligently for the company all these years, if things continue this way, I'll be overtaken by the juniors, and my peers will leave me behind. My life is over.
It was a pitiful story. And what is he saying now, after all this time? It was clear from the time we were married that Bert wasn't going to be promoted.
You seem to be misunderstanding something. Of course, you're not getting promoted. You act all high and mighty without being competent at your job. You blame your mistakes on your subordinates and dodge responsibility. Yet, you try to curry favor with your superiors. No company would promote someone like that.
Confronted with the truth, Bert had nothing to rebut.
Do you understand how wrong you were? Now, change your attitude and start living your life properly.
I thought about pressing further, but realized that saying anything more would be pointless and was about to hang up. However, Bert, perhaps out of desperation, suddenly begged for reconciliation.
"Let's start over."
"Excuse me?"
"Let's try again, you and I. This time, I'll properly take care of the children and give you my entire salary. We won't rely on Ethan's money. I'll support us. Let's forget everything and start anew, building a wonderful family and life together. We can do it. With the new me, we surely can. So, let's start over."
Had he eaten something odd? His words sent chills down my spine. Ethan, listening nearby, looked more dismayed than I had ever seen him.
Do you even understand what you're saying? Starting over is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Even if you transformed into a wonderful person, it's impossible. No matter how much money you offer, it's impossible. Just hearing your voice makes it impossible. It's simply impossible. That's all. There's no way that's true. You just don't understand the risk of letting go of a big company employee like me.
Big company employee, huh? I hadn't wanted to go this far for the sake of Bert's pride, but it seemed necessary to make him give up.
Listen, you always bring up being a big company employee, but do you even understand your current situation? Do you realize you're the top candidate for layoffs in the company? Or better yet, do you know where I work?
Where?
At N Corporation. The same company as you. I work there as the Chief of General Affairs. Though it's remote work. What?
Bert must have never imagined that I was working as the Chief of General Affairs at the same company. Shocked, he murmured something unintelligible over the phone. I originally worked as a sales department manager at N Corporation, but the continuous busy days led to a deterioration in my health, and I resigned. Feeling down because I couldn't work, which had been my only joy, I was introduced to Bert by an acquaintance. Surprised to hear he worked at the same company, I wanted to say,
"Me too."
But Bert bragged so much about working at N Corporation that I ended up not saying anything. He kept bragging about it even after we got married. But now, knowing that I had been a manager at N Corporation and had taken the position of General Affairs Manager, his boasting had become meaningless.
But why suddenly a General Affairs Manager?
It's thanks to Ethan.
Ethan's?
The president of the company where Ethan works was a classmate of N Corporation's president. Through conversations between the presidents, Ethan's work ethic became a topic of discussion, and it was then revealed that I was Ethan's mom. The president of N Corporation personally sent me a letter through Ethan, asking me to come back. Thanks to Ethan's support, I decided to return to work. What surprised me more was that the president arranged for our family to live in the high-rise condo he used to live in. It was a gesture of gratitude for returning to N Corporation, but I was astonished to learn it was such a luxurious high-rise condo. It was rented out to us at a very low price, considering it was for the sake of the young children. I am deeply grateful to the president for allowing us to live in such an incredible place. That's the story. Then, Bert began to lose his mind over the phone, to the point it was unmistakable. I could hear Bert yelling in a voice I had never heard before, and while I couldn't make out the exact situation over the phone, it was clear there was commotion around him. Alongside that, there were also voices that sounded like multiple security guards saying,
"Don't move!"
A few minutes later, I heard the sound of police sirens, followed by a moment of silence, and then Bert's shouting alongside the shouts of police officers. Finally, the sound of the police sirens faded away, growing distant. I later learned from an acquaintance that Bert had caused a scene at the entrance of N Corporation during work and was warned by security guards. His defiant attitude led to a call to the police, and he was taken away. After being held for questioning, he was eventually released. Naturally, this incident led to his termination from the company, and now he is reportedly living on the streets without a home. But there's still something Bert needs to do for us. It involves paying alimony and child support. To ensure he pays these, we've hired a lawyer and are prepared for battle. We've caught Bert, who is now living on the streets, to demand alimony and child support. Bert is said to be working desperately every day to make these payments. The former big company employee is nowhere to be seen. As for me, I'm leading a busy life as an executive of N Corporation, working from home. Of course, I'm always surrounded by my young children. Balancing work and childcare is challenging, but I have Ethan, who is more reliable than anyone.
Mom, I've bathed everyone, so it's your turn now. Thank you.
Take your time. What I think now is that divorcing was truly the right decision. Had we forced ourselves to continue the marriage, not just my life, but also the lives of my children, would have been ruined. I'm only grateful to Ethan for leading us to make this decision. From now on, I plan to live happily with our family of 7. In the dim light of the evening, inside the room, the doorbell rang. I wiped the tears streaming down my cheeks and looked toward the entrance. My mother-in-law Anna and my sister-in-law Sophia stood side by side.
Oh, they've come to help.
I hurried towards the entrance. Opening the door, I was stunned.
Come on, please. Bring them in.
Anna's voice directed people who appeared to be movers.
Excuse us, we're coming in.
And they entered the house.
What? Wait, what's going on?
Hearing my bewildered voice, my son Noah, who was in his room upstairs, hurried down the stairs.
What's happening, Mom?
Noah asked, watching the movers bustling around.
Well,
I turned back to Noah, confused, when Anna and Sophia spoke up.
We're taking my son's house. You guys need to leave. Yeah, that's right. Get out now.
Meanwhile, my father-in-law John efficiently directed the movers, and the boxes were carried into the living room as well as the other rooms one after another. Suddenly, Noah, his face turning pale, exclaimed,
"No, you can't do that. Don't you know, aunties?
His face was ghostly pale.
This house isn't Dad's anymore, and it's haunted."
John turned around, and the movers stopped in their tracks. Catching everyone's attention, Noah shook with a tremor. "My name is Emma, 41 years old. My husband, Liam, was a 42-year-old company employee. He had a calm nature and doesn't indulge in alcohol, smoking, or gambling. He worked diligently every day for our family. Liam's hobby was watching movies with me on weekends. Until last year, our son Noah used to join us, but since starting middle school, he preferred spending weekends with his friends over us. While I felt a bit lonely, Liam seemed to find it endearing. He fondly recalled not following his parents' advice to go to a prestigious school, his time as a class representative and student council president, and talked about his high school best friend.
"Jackson was your best friend, right? You've always been a top student, haven't you?"
I teased. Liam laughed.
"If my parents heard that, they'd be outraged."
Squinting his eyes while reminiscing. "Still, I had a great time in school," he murmured.
"Are you having fun now?"
I asked while watching a rented DVD at home.
"Yeah, I am,"
Liam answered simply. Then, looking around the living room. "No," he corrected himself.
"It's more than fun. It's happiness. We chose and bought this house ourselves. I have a kind wife and a healthy son."
His face clearly showing that.
"There's nothing more I want."
From the bottom of his heart made me blush.
"That's where you say beautiful wife."
I swung my arm in mock frustration, and Liam dodged with a laugh.
All right. I'm happy with my beautiful wife. All I need to do now is work hard to pay off that mortgage."
We were still paying off our home loan. Liam had arranged the loan so that I, a housekeeper, wouldn't need to work. I'm the lucky one to have such a kind husband, I thought to myself, watching the DVD next to Liam. Liam would always say that our married life is happy, but I can't help but think it wasn't quite happy for him back when he was living at his parents' house before we got married. It's apparent to anyone that he didn't get along well with his parents and his sister, Sophia. I heard the whole issue started when Liam didn't attend the high school his parents wanted him to go to. Sophia, who is 2 years older than him, obediently enrolled in the high school chosen by their parents. She went to college and even got a job at a company her parents approved of, just as they wanted. My sister has become incapable of thinking or deciding for herself. According to Liam, that's how it was. It's easy to just do as your parents say, but then you become a person who can't act without their instructions. You lose the ability to adapt to situations and make your own decisions. As expected, once Sophia started working at the company, she couldn't do anything without being told what to do, felt uncomfortable, and quit within a year. Then, her parents quickly arranged her marriage to Harry, my brother-in-law. Even though Liam was there, they made Harry their adopted son-in-law and lived with him. To me, it doesn't make sense to adopt a son-in-law when you already have a capable son like Liam. And it's not like John's family was that wealthy or anything. John was just a regular company employee. I didn't see the need for them to struggle financially to send their kids to a preparatory school. Ah, that's just my mother and father putting on a show, Liam would say. Apparently, there was a wealthy family living nearby, and their daughter was the same age as Sophia. When they were younger, they used to play with the neighborhood kids, but that changed once they started attending preparatory school. Nothing in particular happened between them and that family, but Liam's parents envied that girl and her family. Determined to send their own children to a preparatory school, they saved up diligently and managed to enroll Sophia into one. As a result, their dinners were humble, except for Sophia's luxurious sandwiches, a rather odd dietary life. Not seeing the need for such a struggle, Liam chose to attend a local high school. I think that was the right decision. But his parents were furious, and from that day, their attitude towards Liam noticeably changed. They used to beam with vanity when mentioning the high school Sophia attended. When people would remark, "I bet your son is too," they might have felt embarrassed admitting he went to a local school. But there's no need to dream of a higher standard of living than necessary. The in-laws and Sophia's family of 3 kids lived in a rented house. Not that there's anything wrong with renting, but I do wonder if they could have spent their money more effectively instead of just for appearances. They even went into debt to send Sophia to a preparatory school and college, and they're still paying it off. I could never understand their way of thinking or their sense of money. This also applied to the allowances given to the kids. The difference in the amount given to Sophia's kids and to Noah, our son, was blatantly obvious. It might be a difference in affection for the grandchildren living with them, but I can't help feeling sorry for Noah. It makes me sigh to think that even Noah is affected by this. It seems that they also didn't like the fact that we owned our house. A 2-story single-family home. Our house is bigger than the in-laws. Showing off with a study, huh? This house is too nice for you. They often came over to our place and made such snide remarks. On top of that, they'd make sarcastic comments like, "Look, there's a stain here," or "The flooring is discolored," and so on and so forth. They would also nitpick. "It's not that impressive after all." They would complain. I really don't see the point of them doing that. If they don't like it, they shouldn't come over. According to Liam, they're just jealous. Or so he said. They're envious because they don't have money and we bought a house, even though we're paying a mortgage. Liam laughed, saying it's all because of their strange habit of keeping up appearances. Harry must have been earning a decent salary. John, who was in his 60s, was still working. But their debt repayment was holding them back. "Don't worry about it," Liam said, but Anna and Sophia would come over when Liam or Noah weren't around. Lately, they've been walking around our house freely while I prepare coffee. "This should be our bedroom. My husband likes this room. This room is spacious. Maybe it could be a study room for the kids?" They'd exchange such comments with each other. "What are you doing?" When I finally let my discomfort show, they just smirked and said, "Oh dear, we were just looking around." "Yeah, and you take your sweet time making coffee." I closed the door of the room they were snooping in and had them return to the living room. When Anna asked for a spare key, I felt a bit scared. I couldn't possibly give a spare key to Anna, who walks around someone else's house uninvited. There's a chance she could enter our house when no one is around and rummage through drawers and closets. I thought it was so selfish of them to ask for a spare key when they treated Liam so poorly. "I'll have to talk to Liam about that." I dodged the question and had Liam call later to firmly refuse the request. "How could you deny a key to your own parents?" Anna was furious, but unfortunately, it's his parents who are untrustworthy, so it can't be helped. "Anyhow, just come over when either Emma or myself are at home," Liam said, ending the call. Good health is the most important thing. It's a saying we often hear. At this age, I suddenly felt the weight of those words. Liam was diagnosed with cancer. After feeling unwell in his stomach and getting tested, we were lost for words. Each test revealed more cancer spread throughout his body. The doctor said that without surgery, he only had a few months to live. We had insurance, but it wasn't enough. We had to deal with not only the hospital bills but living expenses and our mortgage too. The happiness we had built fell apart in an instant. I was trembling with fear of losing Liam and the uncertainty of our future. I didn't know what to do and was just scared. "I'll ask my parents for help." My parents had already passed away. Being an only child, I had no other family to turn to. "Okay. I'll go too." We told Liam's parents, Sophia and her husband, about his condition and asked for financial help. Cancer can be treated pretty easily these days, right? Sophia didn't seem to grasp the situation. The in-laws were hesitant about giving financial aid, though not as much as Sophia. I thought I heard you finished paying off your debt a few months ago. Yeah, we finally managed to.
Please, we will definitely pay you back. Lend us the money for the surgery and hospitalization. The money you were going to spend on my education, lend it to us now. Please. I will work too. Please just help us.
We begged, going on our knees and crossing our hands together. No way. We've only just started being able to afford some luxuries recently.
I have insurance that will waive the mortgage if I die. Should that happen, I'll even sell the house to pay back what we borrowed from you. We'll write a memorandum too.
We pleaded again and again. But despite somewhat expecting it, we were devastated when Liam's parents shook their heads, refusing to help.
In that case, why don't you just sell the house now?
Of course, we knew that might be our only option eventually. But if we were to sell it then, we would have to make sure that the money we make can cover hospital bills, treatment costs, and even the rent for a new place for us after subtracting the remaining mortgage. I heard that before we got married, Liam used to send money home to his parents even after he had moved out. It seemed only fair that they could spend a little money for Liam now. No matter how much we pleaded, my in-laws and Sophia's answers didn't change. Liam straightened his back and replied in a flat voice. Understood. That's fine. As we were leaving.
Wait a minute.
Harry caught up with us.
This isn't nearly enough, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't have any savings.
And he handed Liam $1,000. Of course, he wouldn't have savings. He was helping with the debt repayment. Despite their boastful claims of,
we finally paid it off.
It was also thanks to Harry.
I'll try to persuade them again. Please don't lose heart.
We thanked Harry deeply for his kind words.
Thank you. Just the thought is enough. But still, do you have a plan?
Yes. Like my sister said, we're thinking of selling the house.
Really?
I couldn't help but exclaim. Selling the house isn't simple. There are many procedures to go through, and it will take time. There wouldn't be enough time for Liam's hospitalization, which was in a few days. Even if we managed to sell it, we would need to find a new place to live. It's not going to be easy or quick.
Don't worry. I just remembered someone who might be able to help.
Liam said, smiling at me. Liam fought hard with the cancer for 2 years since the diagnosis. Despite being given only a few months to live, we made many happy memories as a family of 3, in and out of the hospital. We had grown distant with my in-laws, but when the doctor said, he probably can't return home, I contacted them. They visited a few times, but they would just say, he still looks okay, in a cold manner, and go back home right away. It's as if they were just coming to see how much longer Liam has left. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thought. Surely not. Contact his family, the doctor said. The time had finally come. I called Anna hastily.
Oh my gosh! I need to hurry. Yes, it's urgent. You must come to his room right away.
Huh? Oh, okay. I'll come if I can. The call ended abruptly, and I returned to Liam and Noah in the hospital room. Only Harry, who came directly from work, and Liam's best friend Jackson showed up. Liam barely opened his eyes, but looked happy to see everyone before closing them for the last time. Harry and Jackson helped with the funeral arrangements. Harry stayed with Liam while Jackson drove Noah and I home so that we could get ready. It was morning when we left the hospital, but the sun had already started to set. We hadn't even cleaned up after breakfast because we had left in a hurry. I turned on the lights in the dim house in the evening. I sat down in the living room and flipped through a photo album. Tears flowed as I looked through it. I wiped the tears falling onto the table and chose a photo of Liam out of all the memorable photos. The doorbell rang. I wiped the tears from my cheeks and looked at the entrance. Anna and Sophia were standing side by side.
Oh, they've come to help.
Even though they didn't make it in time for Liam's final moments, I hurried to the entrance, thankful they came. But I was stunned when I opened the door.
Come on, bring everything in.
Anna's voice directed people who appeared to be movers.
Excuse us, we're coming in.
And they entered the house.
What? Wait, what's going on?
Hearing my bewildered voice, my son Noah, who was in his room upstairs, hurried down the stairs.
What's happening, Mom?
He asked, watching the movers bustling around.
Well,
I turned back to Noah, confused, when Anna and Sophia spoke up.
We're taking my son's house. You guys need to leave. Yeah, that's right. Get out now.
Meanwhile, John efficiently directed the movers, and the boxes were carried into the living room as well as the other rooms one after another. Suddenly, Noah, his face turning pale, exclaimed,
No, you can't do that. Don't you know, aunties?
Noah's face was ghostly pale.
This house isn't Dad's anymore, and it's haunted.
John turned around, and the movers stopped in their tracks. Catching everyone's attention, Noah shook with a tremor. In the midst of all this, a figure comes in through the entrance.
What the heck are you doing bringing stuff into my house without permission? Get it out right now.
Everyone jumped up at the sound of Jackson's angry voice, which seemed to echo throughout the house, or rather, the entire neighborhood. The movers began taking the stuff they had just brought in back outside without checking with my in-laws, their customers. Not knowing what to do with the boxes, they just left them on the street in front of the house.
No, my desk!
I heard my nephew's voice and turned to see Harry standing there with his 3 children. The children, seeing their belongings abandoned on the street, made complaints one after another, while Harry asked Sophia,
I came over when I heard about the sudden move, but what's this all about?
Although Harry is usually mild-mannered, he was furious.
What? But Mom said we were moving. What are you talking about? You agreed too.
In the midst of an ugly argument between mother and daughter, Harry coldly declared,
I can't deal with you all anymore. We're getting a divorce. What? Wait, what are you saying?
Harry negotiated directly with the movers to take only his and the children's belongings to his parents' house.
Sorry for the trouble at such a difficult time. I'll have them take the kids and our stuff to my parents' place.
Without giving Sophia a second glance, Harry and the kids left with the movers. Sophia collapsed crying on the road, and the in-laws stood dumbfounded among the remaining belongings. The neighbors came out to see what was happening, turning the situation into a nightmare.
Can we at least move these inside so they're not in the way?
I nodded at his words.
Yes, that's fine. This is your house, after all. What do you mean?
The in-laws stared at us, confused. This is the truth. The day after being refused financial help by my in-laws 2 years ago, Liam brought home with him a very tough-looking man. That man was Jackson. He ran a real estate business and even gave me his business card. I was told that he was a high school classmate of Liam's. Not only was his face tough-looking, but he had an intimidating vibe, so I couldn't help but imagine that he was involved with shady business. Noah got frightened and clung to me tightly, even though he was already in middle school. I glanced at Liam with concern. Noticing my gaze, Liam tilted his head and then laughed as if he just realized something.
It's okay. Jackson might look scary, but he's a respectable member of society now. Now?
That's when Noah timidly pointed it out. Jackson's eyes widened, and he smacked Liam's head.
Liam!
Liam was ill, for God's sake. I couldn't believe it, but Liam just laughed heartily. Noah looked so pale that I was worried if he was even breathing.
Jackson, you didn't even come to our wedding, even though I sent you an invitation. And you never pay us a visit even though I invite you over.
I suddenly remembered. The name Jackson often came up in Liam's stories about his school days and when he went out drinking. From the stories, he seemed like a good friend, so I never imagined this was the same person. You can see why. My looks scare people, so showing up at your wedding or visiting would just cause trouble.
Is that why you're still single? I'll hit you again.
I could tell from their light banter that this was indeed the Jackson that Liam had been talking about. I couldn't help but chuckle at their conversation. Both stopped and looked at me.
Ah, sorry. It's just that Liam is so excited, like a child. Huh? He's always like this. Jackson. Remember, Noah is here too. A father's dignity is important. Dignity, huh, that's something you've never had. Noah.
Noah's remark lightened the mood. I told Jackson that Liam was really disappointed he didn't come to our wedding and that we want him to visit any time. Thank you. Now, let's move on to business. We don't have the luxury of time. Jackson's demeanor changed suddenly to a serious expression. First, let me look at the condition of the house. Jackson went around checking each room. Once he finished examining the exterior walls and the meter box, he pulled out his laptop and started typing something. After a while, he showed us the screen.
How about this amount for the selling price?
I was taken aback by the amount he proposed. It was higher than what we had paid when we bought it. It's a very generous appraisal, but can we really sell it for this price? It's been about 10 years since we moved in, and there would be no point if it doesn't sell. We hadn't renovated it in years. Like Anna and Sophia said, there are stains here and there. Ah, I heard about that from Liam. They were talking about what they were going to do with each room, right? Yes. That means they think it's still perfectly habitable. Don't worry, it will sell for this price. Full of confidence, Jackson assured us. You can trust him. Liam added. Understood. Please proceed with this price. As I agreed, Jackson quickly spread several documents on the table. Oh, and we need to find somewhere else to live. At my words, Jackson responded. Sure. With a smile. He laid out rental agreement papers as well. First, I will buy this house directly. That solves one problem. Then, I'll rent it back to you. There, the second problem is also solved. Huh. I was taken aback, but Jackson continued. I'll transfer the money from the sale into your account within a few days. From there, we can pay off the remaining loan. Jackson smiled reassuringly. It was a boyish smile that made his earlier intimidating impression vanish. As we filled out the documents, I noticed the rental fee.
$100.
Both Liam and Noah looked surprised too, peering over the document. Shouldn't it be $1,000? Liam said. It's a typo, right? And as we laughed, it's not a mistake. Jackson said. What? I owe that much to Liam. After a moment of thought. No, you don't. Liam said. But Jackson told me about their high school days. Jackson was a real delinquent back then. He had been in trouble with the police several times and was often in fights which left his mother in tears. One day, his mother, a single mom, was hospitalized. She had fainted from stress and exhaustion. Rushing to the hospital, Jackson was shocked to see how frail and small his mother had become. He realized it was his fault and bawled his eyes out like a child. After that, he changed his ways, stopped getting into fights, and stayed out of trouble with the police. But then one day, a cigarette butt was found on the rooftop of the school building. It caught fire in a nearby dumpster and caused a small blaze. This became a problem at school, and they assumed Jackson, who had a bad reputation, was the culprit. No matter how much he denied it, saying, "It's not me." No one believed him due to his past behavior. He was at risk of being expelled. When his mother burst into tears again, Liam believed in Jackson's innocence. He was the only one who believed in my innocence. He was the student council president at the time. We were in the same class, but had never really talked before. Jackson reminisced, saying Liam had protested to the principal, did some investigation among the students, gathered evidence, and found the real culprit. Huh, but you had insisted you didn't do it, right? Naturally, I believed him. No way. But thanks to you, I graduated high school and gave back to my mother. I even became the president of a company. That's why Jackson said he owed that much. The three of us, as a family, exchanged glances and gratefully accepted the rent proposal. This was what happened that day 2 years ago. As Noah said, I own this house now and am renting it to this family. If you don't believe me, I'll show you the documents later. Jackson glanced at Noah, then turned back to the in-laws with a smile. However, either family is welcome to rent the house. Shall I offer you a bargain? Jackson smiled at my astonishment. I'll also introduce you to new properties. After the funeral, we moved out of the house and into an apartment Jackson had recommended. Just unpack the bare essentials. We'll probably be able to move back to that house soon. Jackson said with a mischievous smile, and I asked him what made him think so. Noah, curious too, came closer to us. I actually thought about kicking them out that day. But then I changed my mind. Listen, here's the plan. Jackson leaned in, as if sharing a secret with us. 3 days later, we went back to our old home saying, we left a couple of things behind. Under the pretense that we were retrieving them. Anna reluctantly offered snacks when Jackson joined us. How's the new place? Not bad at all. John replied contentedly. Really? Noah asked. Yes, really. No noises from the empty stairs? Or in the shower room? Noah looked around the living room fearfully. Right, Noah said there were ghosts, didn't he? I don't think Mom knows about it, but ever since Dad got hospitalized, I started to hear strange noises. Once, I saw the hem of a skirt on the stairs, thinking Mom was back, but no one was there. That's ridiculous. Anna's words were cut off as Noah and Jackson simultaneously looked upstairs. Is there someone on the second floor? That was impossible. Sophia completely lost her vigor after her divorce with Harry was finalized. Although she was silent, she was in the living room. What? Stop with this nonsense. I didn't hear anything. Noah and Jackson exchanged glances and hurriedly packed up. That's good to hear. We'll take our leave then. They rushed out of the house and quickly got into the car. The in-laws, who had come to see us off at the entrance, looked frightened. In the car, we burst into laughter. Jackson's plan was to use the lie about ghosts that Noah had made up on the spot. This is for treating Liam poorly for so long. Where in the world do you find a parent or sister neglecting their dying son and getting ready to move into his house? I couldn't agree more with the words that Jackson spat out while he was driving. Jackson and Noah played such pranks on them repeatedly. Eventually, it was even said that mysterious incidents that neither of them had even mentioned would occur in that house. The in-laws and Sophia got creeped out, mistaking the noises in the house for poltergeists. They complained to Jackson and Noah, but we never experienced such things. Jumping to conclusions can be a scary thing, Noah said, laughing. Eventually, the in-laws and Sophia couldn't stand it anymore and moved out of the house. They rented a place within their budget, introduced by Jackson. That was just business. I made sure to find them a decent, budget-friendly old apartment, Jackson said with a sly smirk, and Noah and I applauded. By the way, Sophia, after divorcing Harry, had to start working again to pay child support. Seems like she's getting a taste of the harshness of society. I wish her all the best now that she has to single-handedly take care of her parents who had looked after her. Eventually, we returned to the house we bought with Liam. Although we couldn't buy it back, we still live there for a rent of $100. Harry and his 3 kids have started to visit again. Sophia seems to be asking for reconciliation, but Harry is not considering it at all. Once a month, Jackson comes over to collect the rent. He times it with Liam's monthly anniversary. After looking at Liam's photo, we have dinner together, and he even listens to Noah's troubles, now a high school student. And Noah and I have a little secret joy. It's the stories about Liam's school days that we hear occasionally at dinner. We hear so many stories that we never knew about, and we learn new things about Liam. I'm sure Liam is smiling with us around the dining table.
No way, come on.
Liam would say, making childish excuses.
A life without kids is just miserable. My daughter Laura is both adorable and a genius.
William said that with a smirk, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of uncontrollable anger. It was like he'd forgotten all he's done to me, and then he just came up to talk to me with that nonsense. I couldn't help but be furious. However, I remembered the situation I was in and managed to suppress my anger. Trying to appear as cheerful as possible, I decided to reply to him. Even if he gets mad at it, it's nothing compared to what I've endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and proudly said, "Okay, let me also introduce my daughter, Jasmine." I'm probably wearing the kind of smile I imagine. While showing that to him, I hugged Jasmine, who ran up to me.
What?
He looked at us, his mouth agape in surprise. He probably couldn't accept the reality he had always looked down upon. His mistress Kate, who was grinning just like him until a moment ago, also seemed unable to hide her shock. While looking at them, I started talking to Jasmine. "My name is Isabel, and I'm a 51-year-old office worker. I have a daughter, and people are often surprised when I tell them she's 12. I did marry late, but there were reasons for that. I have a history of divorce, and I didn't have children at that time. I met my ex-husband William in an arrangement that was almost like an arranged marriage. A friend of mine worried about me always working and not getting married, and threw a party for me. That's where William took a liking to me, and I received his advances. Even so, I wasn't interested at first and was reluctant to respond to his actions. Yet, as he approached me persistently, I gradually started to return his feelings. Eventually, we started dating and soon got married. After marriage, William was serious about having children. Being in my late 30s, I felt a lot of pressure. I don't know if it was because of that, but we couldn't have a baby for a long time. Gradually, William's attitude turned cold, and he started to look down on me.
What, infertile? Were you here? Did you pick up the dry cleaning I asked for?
He called me infertile, treating me almost like a slave. It was so frustrating, I struggled to find a solution. I went to the hospital imagining the worst, but there was nothing wrong with me. I was even told that stress might be the cause, which left me feeling hopeless. I tried changing my diet, taking supplements. I tried everything, but still couldn't get pregnant. I suggested William get tested, thinking maybe the problem wasn't with me. Listen, William. I went to the hospital, and they found nothing wrong. So, maybe it's worth considering that the issue might be with you, and you should get tested. As soon as I said that, his face turned red with anger.
What? You're saying I'm the problem? It's just that you can't get pregnant, don't suspect me.
But there's nothing wrong with me, and I've been under treatment for a long time. If we still can't have a baby, it might be because of you.
No way. I'm always fine. The problem is definitely with you, okay?
He completely rejected my suggestion, blaming me. At first, I fought back, but it's hard when someone keeps saying you're the one at fault. Gradually, I became exhausted, and one day, his words made it clear that I couldn't do it anymore.
What's the point of being a woman if you can't even have a baby?
He said it so disdainfully, and I couldn't respond. It wasn't that I agreed with his words. Instead, I was shocked at why I had to be spoken to like that. I worked while managing household chores, and I thought I had devoted myself to him, who was also working. Nevertheless, just because I couldn't have a baby, I never expected to be so thoroughly negated. With no emotional support and losing my motivation, I couldn't bring myself to ask him to get tested again. The thought of hearing the same words again frightened me so much that I couldn't speak up. Sensing that, he started commanding me to do various things.
Man, I'm tired. I want a different drink, not the usual beer today. Hey, you can't get pregnant, so you must be free, right? Come home right now.
Laughing smugly, he treated me like a slave. If I showed any sign of arguing back, he'd hurl even more abuse at me. Still, I endured and just kept going day by day. You'd think I'd better divorce him if I'm putting up with all that. However, I married late and thought I wouldn't be able to marry again if I let that go. Also, I was embarrassed about divorcing and couldn't take that step. Time passed without me being able to do anything, and I turned 38. That's when things took a sudden turn. Even then, I was enduring harassment almost every day about infertility while continuing to work.
Hey, you should know what I don't like by now. I can't eat such terrible food. This is why infertile women.
That day, after he snapped at me like that, I couldn't hold back anymore and argued back.
What does the meal have to do with not having a baby? I can't stand it anymore. Enough is enough.
When I said so, William jumped up and started yelling at me.
What's with that attitude? You can't even fulfill your role as a woman, and now you complain to me when I come back from work.
Suddenly bombarded with nonsensical complaints, I got furious.
What do you mean by a woman's role? If it's about having a baby, you have a responsibility too. I got tested and there was nothing wrong. But you refused to get tested, trying to escape your responsibility. And yet, you only complain about me, which I think is unfair.
He seemed a bit taken aback by my rare rebuttal, but his silence was brief, and he soon started hurling abuses again.
Why are you so stubborn? In times like these, she would immediately reflect and apologize.
Hearing his words, it was my turn to be stunned. Before I could ask who he was talking about, he made a sheepish look and quickly looked away. Then, he left the house without a word. He didn't come home that day, and my distrust in him grew. From his words, it was clear there was another woman. That meant he was cheating, and if I pursued it, I might be able to divorce him. It wouldn't be because I couldn't have children, but because of William's affair. Thinking that, I soon took action. I searched online for a nearby private detective agency and hired them. William was apparently cheating recently. I had them investigate his mistress and his behavior. A few weeks after my request, the results came from the agency. During that time, William would come home but wouldn't meet my eyes. He seemed to be avoiding me, and the constant verbal abuse had stopped. Surprised at how comfortably I was living, I regretted not taking action sooner. I should have done this earlier. While thinking that, I looked at the report. It contained the fact that William was having an affair with evidence. It also included a report on his mistress. Her name was Kate. She was 23 years old, naturally younger than both of us. It seemed they started dating soon after I first suggested William get tested. So, he had been cheating for a few years. Angered by the fact, I decided to divorce him and started preparations. While I was preparing, he stayed quiet. That allowed me to steadily proceed, and I finally confronted him about the divorce.
William, there's something I need to talk about. It's not about the test, it's more important.
When I said that, he looked annoyed as he was just back from work.
What now at this time? I've got something to tell you, too. Make it quick.
Saying so wearily, he still seemed to be listening while operating his mobile phone. Before he changed his mind, I quickly presented him with the report from the private detective agency.
You're having an affair. I've had it properly investigated, so there's no escaping it. With both the baby issue and your affair, I can't take it anymore. I want a divorce.
Saying that, I also presented a half-filled divorce application as a sign of my resolve. Far from being flustered, he smirked and took the divorce papers from my hand.
Ha, you're well prepared. Such perfect timing makes me doubt your predictive abilities.
As he said that and operated his mobile phone, the sound of the front door opening echoed.
Good evening. Nice to meet you. I'm Kate, the one who's going to marry William next.
Entering from the entrance was the person in the photo enclosed in the report. Younger and cuter than she appeared in the photo, Kate greeted me with a grin.
I was just about to introduce you today. I never imagined you'd prepare the divorce papers. If you were always this considerate, I might have stayed, but it's too late now.
While half laughing, he entered the living room with the divorce papers in hand. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, I stood frozen, unable to grasp the situation. After a while, William came out of the living room, having signed the divorce papers. Handing them to me with a smirk, he said,
"It saved me a lot of trouble. We're no longer a couple, so leave immediately. Kate's pregnant,
and I want her to spend her time as stress-free as possible. With Kate and William smirking maliciously, I lost myself. I snatched the divorce papers from his hand and rushed into my room. Then, I grabbed my already packed bags and left the house without a word. 13 years later since then, I was visiting a project I had been involved in that had just been completed. I work as a specialist consultant, and this time I was in charge of designing a condominium that was disaster-resistant and supportive of childcare. At that time, after being introduced to Kate by William, I took refuge in a nearby Holiday Inn. I waited for dawn, then submitted the divorce papers to City Hall and moved from hotel to motel. Eventually, I moved into a house and devoted myself to my work. My mood lightened after divorcing William, and work went smoothly, with increased business opportunities and networking. Thanks to that, I was appointed as a project leader, which led to this urban development project. Now that the long-term project was finally complete, I felt relieved. There was a small event, and the place was crowded. Suddenly, I heard a familiar, unpleasant voice.
Hey, long time no see. Still all alone? I'm here to buy a condo for a family of 3. Not that it matters to you.
I regretfully turned towards the voice and regretted it. There stood William and Kate. Between them, there was their daughter, who must have been in Kate's womb at that time.
A life without kids is just miserable. My daughter is both adorable and a genius.
Seeing William's smirking face, uncontrollable anger surged within me. It was like he forgot all he'd done, casually speaking to me like that. I couldn't help but be furious. As remembering my situation, I managed to suppress my anger. Trying to appear as cheerful as possible, I decided to reply to him. Even if he gets angry, it's nothing compared to what I've endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and said proudly, "Okay, let me also introduce my daughter." I was probably wearing the kind of smile I had imagined. While showing that to him, I hugged Jasmine, who ran up to me.
Huh?
He looked at us with his mouth agape in surprise. He probably couldn't accept the reality he had always looked down upon. Grinning just like him until a moment ago, Kate seemed unable to hide her shock. While looking at them, I spoke to Jasmine. "Found a spot you want to shoot at?" When I asked, Jasmine smiled brightly and nodded.
I want to shoot in front of the flower bed you insisted on to the end.
She pointed to the flower bed and ran towards it, picking up the equipment beside me. As I watched her tomboyish figure, Kate screamed,
"That's Jasmine from the video sharing site, right? Why is she calling you Mom?"
At Kate's words, their daughter spoke up.
"That's right. Wow, meeting the real deal. Hey, can I get an autograph?" "That's a good idea, Laura. You really are a genius."
Impressed by their arrogant attitude, true to their nature as parent and child, I shrugged my shoulders and firmly declined. "Sorry, but you can't. Jasmine does video posting voluntarily. She enjoys shooting and editing. It's not about being famous. Sure, she's become well known, but that's not what she wants to do."
Well, it wouldn't hurt, right? After all, Laura is a genius. A combination of a popular person and a genius makes a good story.
Listening to William proudly proclaiming his daughter's genius, I asked, weary, "What exactly makes your daughter a genius?" "So far, I only see a lack of common sense and arrogance."
"How dare you say that? Laura has a lot of things to be good at."
I wanted to see concrete examples of her genius, but found nothing specific in Kate's claims, causing me to sigh. Seeing that, William, displeased with my attitude, began to brag more about Laura.
"You know, Laura never sticks to anything. Too much of a genius, she masters everything too quickly. She's tried so many hobbies but gets bored as soon as she excels. Oh boy, the troubles of having a genius child."
Hearing what hardly sounded like a boast, I grew tired. Without much response to his bragging, I moved towards where Jasmine was filming. Behind me, William's family were saying something, but I ignored them and called out to my daughter. "Jasmine, how's the shooting going? Let's go to a cafe when you're done." Jasmine was surrounded by a crowd of people watching her film. Some of them seemed to realize she was Jasmine, making the scene quite lively.
"Just need to shoot the ending, and we're done." Hang on a bit longer,
she cheerfully answered, waving to the people around her before starting the final scene.
Hey, Jasmine! Film with me!
In an oblivious moment, Laura interrupted the filming. Noticing it, Jasmine smiled at Laura and resumed shooting. After finally finishing, Jasmine found herself encircled by onlookers. Like Laura, they asked for autographs, but she politely declined. Instead, she chatted and interacted joyfully with those who approached her. She was continuing her activities because she enjoyed them, not because she wanted fame. Despite her fame, she never boasted about it. Of course, she hadn't thought about giving autographs, so she couldn't offer one. Then, it would be good to communicate a bit as a way of returning the favor to those who approached her. That's what Jasmine has been thinking and acting on. Laura had interrupted her earlier, but Jasmine wanted to maintain her composure in fact. I wonder if Laura really understood Jasmine's gentle refusal. After finishing conversations with most people, Jasmine was about to leave. Laura approached her predictably. She didn't understand Jasmine's intentions.
The filming's done, right? So, film with me next.
Seeing Jasmine staring at Laura in astonishment, I couldn't hold back and intervened.
Sorry, but Jasmine doesn't do collaborations. That smile earlier was just a polite response to your interruption during filming. What's that, pleasantries? Learning such things as a child, aren't you raising her wrong?
Kate interjected sarcastically, looking down at Jasmine with crossed arms. Jasmine briefly frowned but remained silent, not retorting to Kate. Seeing that, Kate became more confident and pressed further.
So, are you saying Laura isn't worth filming with? Laura can do anything, she's a genius. It's actually an opportunity to enhance your image. Why don't you read the situation better?
Overwhelmed by that, Jasmine looked at me for guidance. Receiving her gaze, I sighed and replied to Kate, "Enough already."
You keep calling your daughter a genius, but there's not a single concrete example. Isn't there something more substantial to boast about?
As I said it, the people around us, who had been listening to our conversation, agreed. Pressed by their words, Kate made a displeased face, but Laura seemed unfazed. Instead, she proudly boasted about her accomplishments.
I got an award at a piano recital. It was for practicing well. And also, at dance school for learning a whole song. I also got an award for never missing school. I've been awarded a lot.
Laura was at least over grade 7. Thinking about it, her statements seemed awkward, to say the least. Unaware of that, Laura looked at us expectantly for praise. I exchanged a troubled look with Jasmine, and we could only make helpless faces. The people around us seemed to feel the same, with some even bursting into laughter. Even Kate seemed to read the atmosphere and tried to change the subject forcibly.
By the way, since you're active like this, how much do you earn? You can't possibly afford to live in a condo like this, can you?
Her question seemed desperate, but I decided to reply to avoid rehashing the atmosphere.
Thankfully, we're quite popular on the video sharing site. Of course, we earn an income, but it's saved for Jasmine's future and for buying necessary filming equipment. Sure, this condo is attractive, but we have a house, so we don't need it. Besides, I was part of creating this place, so the success fee is substantial. My current husband runs a company, and combined with his income, moving here wouldn't be a bad idea.
I told her everything she might have wanted to know. Predictably, Kate looked displeased and glared at Jasmine and me. Hearing my story, William seemed too surprised to retort. Whereas, Kate was ever bold, and tried to ingratiate herself with me.
So, you created this place. Then, with just a word from you, we could live here, right? Our kids are about the same age, so out of kindness, could you help us?
I couldn't understand what she meant by kindness, but I had no intention of agreeing. Just as I was about to firmly refuse, Laura asked eagerly by misunderstanding something.
Can you really help us live in this condo? We want to live here. Please.
At her words, I sighed deeply in exasperation. I decided to set the record straight for once and all.
Sorry, but I can't guarantee you can live here. Sure, I might be able to refer you to the management company with my connections, but there are screenings. Things like what job you do, your income, and your prospects. I'm not in charge of the screenings, so it's not guaranteed.
It's up to you, so good luck with that. Hearing that, Kate made her face, while Laura didn't seem to fully understand. Then William butted in, making an unreasonable demand.
My daughter's asking, so make it happen. If you have the connections for creating this place, get us through the screening.
Everyone around whispered at his absurd demand. I pondered how to explain the obvious fact, my head aching.
You can't just interfere in the screening process, can you? That's obviously out of my jurisdiction. If you want to live here, overcome it with your own efforts.
When I said that, William suddenly became enraged and started to rampage. He began ripping out the flowers from the nearby flower bed and throwing them at me. I stood in the way to protect Jasmine from getting hit while scolding him. However, for some reason, Kate and Laura followed his lead and started doing the same. Furthermore, while hurling the flowers, Kate shouted insults at us, and Laura hurled verbal abuse at Jasmine. I was busy protecting Jasmine, but people around us started to intervene to stop them. Nonetheless, the three of them refused to listen and kept throwing anything they could grab. Kate picked up a stone lying nearby and was about to throw it. I grabbed her arm to stop her from hitting Jasmine, but Kate carried away and pushed me. Thus, I fell into the flower bed, hitting my head. Seeing that, people around us condemned them more vehemently and tried desperately to stop them. Yet, the three of them continued to act wildly and were soon restrained. Someone had called the police, though I didn't know who, and they arrived upon hearing the commotion.
Who called the cops?
As the police officers restrained him, William shouted, but no one responded. Kate also was restrained by the police and tried to find out who had reported them. Laura stopped her tantrum but began crying upon seeing her parents being held by the police. The noisy scene was suddenly overtaken by the commanding voice of a police officer.
You're under arrest for obstructing official duties.
With those words, the place became silent instantly. It seemed William had attacked a police officer and was being arrested on the spot. Holding my head and hugging Jasmine, who was close to tears, I watched the scene unfold. As William was taken away, Kate and Laura were also escorted to the police station. The three of them were put in a police car and gradually disappeared from view. After such a huge uproar caused by William's family, I felt drained as they were easily taken away by the police. Meanwhile, I came to myself by Jasmine's desperate yell.
Mom, you're hurt. Should we go to the hospital? Otherwise, you will.
Affected by the chaos, Jasmine finally burst into tears. I hugged her, apologizing for involving her in such an incident. The people around us also expressed their concern, making me feel cared for. Though I was in pain, the fact that Jasmine was safe made it seem insignificant. Every time someone asked, I assured them I was fine, and soon the sound of an ambulance siren was heard. Apparently, someone had called an ambulance as well. When the ambulance arrived, I was taken away with the police officers. As I boarded the ambulance with Jasmine, I glanced back at the flower bed where the flowers had been torn out. As being involved in the construction of a large condominium, I had wanted to mitigate its oppressive presence. So, I established a park on the property and planted flower beds there. I hoped the park would become a place of rest and foster enjoyable conversations. I met my current husband in a park, taking a break from work and admiring the flower beds. He approached me, and we started talking, eventually becoming close. Initially, we only met during lunch breaks, but gradually we began dining out and eventually married. Soon after, we were blessed with Jasmine, and despite it being a late pregnancy, she was born safely. That park with the flower beds had brought me happiness. Therefore, in the projects I was involved in, I wanted to create opportunities for others to find happiness. That was the idea behind that flower bed. Its destruction saddened me deeply, and I was quite shocked. Upon reaching the hospital, treatment began immediately, and I needed a few stitches. Thankfully, it wasn't visible, much to my relief. Seeing it, Jasmine seemed reassured, and by the time we left the hospital, she was smiling again. While waiting for the bill, I was questioned by the police and decided to file a complaint. I also decided to hire a lawyer and ensure that William's family faced appropriate consequences. Thanks to that, Kate was arrested for assault. According to the lawyer, with her parents in police custody, Laura was taken in by Kate's parents. I thought that was unfortunate enough, but she was in for strict re-education from her grandparents. Taken in by her grandparents, she was apparently reprimanded and criticized greatly for her usual behavior. Due to her young age, it seems she is being disciplined strictly for rehabilitation. It will likely lead to challenging days ahead for not only William and Kate but also for Laura. As for me, my injury has been healing well since then. I had the stitches removed recently, so there's no significant injury anymore. Jasmine has become even more popular since that day and has been busy. It turns out that it was one of her followers who called the police and ambulance. After the filming ended, sensing the tense atmosphere, Jasmine quickly switched to live streaming. Thanks to that, when the brawl escalated, one of her followers took action. We are truly grateful for that, as it helped bring the situation under control. Afterward, Jasmine wanted to thank the person and made a call out in a video, but no one came forward. So, we decided to post another video expressing our gratitude. When we went to film the video at the park where the disturbance occurred, we found the flower bed beautifully restored. Apparently, volunteers had fixed it up after the incident, which was a relief. Since then, things have been going surprisingly well. My work on the condominium has led to an increased evaluation of my job. I've been promoted and now am the head of the planning department. Jasmine's video views have skyrocketed, and she continues to post videos joyfully. My current husband is very concerned about us and has been quite worried. Though I'm fully healed and there are no hindrances to my life, he still occasionally checks on my injury. I'm really happy to be with the kind-hearted husband and Jasmine grow up healthy. There are no problems in my work or family life. I look forward to spending more happy times with three of us. Thanks for taking care of my daughter this past month. I'll come pick her up tomorrow.
What are you talking about?
Sherry, my sister-in-law, who had been traveling for a month, seemed still to be at the airport, as I could hear the sound of boarding announcements through the phone. In contrast to my calm response, she began to panic.
Wait, what? No, what are you talking about? She's there, right? I left Daisy in your condo's garage.
Daisy is her daughter, my niece.
I haven't seen her. What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. I sent you a text, so you know.
I haven't received any text.
You're lying. I know you're lying. Don't play with me. Sherry screamed over the phone, panicking. What are you going to do about it? I left Daisy with you. You're responsible if anything happens. After hanging up once, Sherry tried calling Daisy's child safety phone, but not being able to reach her, she continued to panic. She called me back, even more frantic, so I suggested she might want to go home first.
You're right. That's a good idea.
Upon her return home, she found her husband Leon, Daisy, and me, the three of us together. Sherry seemed to want to ask why the three of us were together. Sherry, I've just been hearing all about it from these two.
What?
At Leon's words, she turned pale. My name is Bonnie, and until a few years ago, I worked a regular office job. Upon turning 40, I became independent and started working as a freelance illustrator. With the increase in income, I now live alone in a condo. My work is primarily home-based, and I only leave the house for essential errands like going to the grocery store or meetings with clients. I'm not married, nor do I have a partner, but I'm satisfied with my life. Friends sometimes ask if I'm lonely, but I've never thought about it that way. I'm more fulfilled by my work and have no plans to look for a partner. I do worry about old age a little, but I think to myself, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it, to which I'm surprised at my own optimism. Today, after meeting a deadline for an illustration, I took a break at 3 p.m. and looked at the calendar. Then, I realized that my brother Leon's birthday was coming up soon. Leon, 5 years my senior, works in sales at a major publishing company and often goes on long business trips. Sometimes, he brings back souvenirs from his travels. Last month, he dropped by and brought some cookies as a souvenir, so I let him in, made some coffee, and we enjoyed the cookies together.
I keep telling you, you don't need to bring anything for me. Buy more for Sherry and Daisy.
But I need to see your face from time to time.
Don't want to find you laying on the floor.
Leon has always been like this, considerate or meddlesome, but it's one of his good traits. Sherry and Daisy are his wife and daughter, therefore my sister-in-law and niece. I haven't told Leon, but I find Sherry a bit difficult to get along with. She's very bright and always dresses fashionably, with her nails done and in the latest trends, giving off a very glamorous impression. It's not that I mind that, but she often looks down on me for being single. At a family gathering at Christmas, she laughed upon learning I had neither a partner nor a love interest. Hey, are you the type who thinks you can afford to wait because you're always young and beautiful? Don't you know about the marriage boat?
I think marriage and romance vary by individual. It's not necessary to have a partner.
She laughed again at my response. I couldn't tell if it was the alcohol or what, but she kept teasing me about the same thing, and it became tiring to deal with. When choosing a condo to live alone, being away from Leon's family was definitely a criterion. That's how much I was fed up with her. However, I got along well with my niece Daisy. She turned 10 this year and seems to go to school carrying a cute light blue backpack. I haven't seen her in it, but she told me about it when she came to visit.
Bonnie, you're so good at drawing.
Daisy, who had been watching me work on illustrations, was impressed and stared at the drawing on the computer screen.
Wow, I wish I could draw too. Oh, want to try? Really?
Yeah, there's still plenty of time before the deadline, so you can have a go. Daisy sat in front of the computer and excitedly started moving the pen. What she drew on the screen was her light blue backpack. She mentioned it was heavy because she also carries a tablet in it. Considering it's even heavier with a water bottle in the summer, I was really impressed by how strong she was despite her small size. According to Daisy, Sherry spends her days as a housewife, and when Leon is away on business trips, she does whatever she pleases. For dinner or lunch on days when school is out, they eat frozen meals or pizza delivery. I'm the one who always does the laundry, and Mom only does it once in a while.
Really?
Yeah, and she gets really mad when my shoes are muddy after PE.
Why? What does Mom do at home?
She's always on her phone or watching TV. Daisy tries not to upset her mom by staying in her room or going out to the park or the library. Hearing this makes me wonder about parenting, but it's tricky to know if it's my place to say anything. There was another time when the family gathered, and I saw Sherry scolding at quiet Daisy harshly. I think Daisy had spilled some tea, but I thought it wasn't something to get so mad about. It could easily be wiped up with paper towels. Mom is scary. She gets mad at everything I say, so I just keep quiet. Daisy's offhand remark about her mom as she was leaving, after drawing her light blue backpack, stuck with me like a splinter. I remembered that day was a sunny weekend, and Sherry had left Daisy with me because she was going on a day trip with her mom friends. I never imagined receiving a similar text on my mobile phone just a few days later. The autumn leaves in the nearby park had deepened, and it was getting to the point where you missed the warmth of the sun. That kind of coldness had arrived. When I returned to my condo after running a small errand, I saw the silhouette of a girl standing alone by the parking lot. She was wearing a light blue backpack, and I was surprised to recognize her face.
Daisy?
When I called out to her, her anxious eyes looked up at me. It was indeed Daisy.
What are you doing here all alone? And what's with the luggage?
Next to her was a small carry-on case, making it look as though she had run away from home. Mom said to go to your house. Seeing my confusion, Daisy gestured towards my bag, saying, on the mobile phone. Perhaps there was a text on my mobile phone. I hurriedly took out my phone from my bag, and indeed, there was a text from Sherry, albeit recently. Bonnie, sorry for the sudden request. I'm going on a trip with a friend for a month starting today. Please take care of my daughter. After reading it, an inarticulate exclamation escaped my lips, but I quickly closed my mouth. Of course, it was out of confusion, but considering Daisy was probably just as bewildered, we decided to go inside. Once inside, Daisy's cheeks were as red as apples, and her hands were very cold. I made her some hot cocoa to warm up a bit and offered her some snacks while listening to her story. Up until a short while ago, Daisy had been drawing in her notebook in her room. Sherry entered Daisy's room without knocking, handed her a carry-on case, and said, "Daisy, get ready, we're going to Bonnie's house. Mom won't be home for a month, so bring your backpack, okay? Understood?" "Okay." Thus, Daisy quickly packed her notebook, pencil case, textbooks, and tablet into her backpack. During this time, Sherry was on the phone, seeming quite restless.
Really? That's great. Don't tell me, are you drinking already? It's too early.
Sherry's voice was high-pitched and filled the house. Hearing her mother's unusual laughter from downstairs, Daisy covered her ears. After the phone call ended, Sherry's voice returned to normal, and then Daisy was left at that place with her luggage. When Daisy got out of the car, Sherry explained to her,
"Be good, I'm leaving you with Bonnie for a month."
She was told to wait here and had been waiting under the cold sky. Despite the sunlight, it was quite a cold season. Thinking about what would have happened if Daisy had caught a cold made me feel a rising anger at the situation.
But does Dad know about this?
I don't think so. Mom doesn't seem to contact Dad much. She told me so as she munched on chocolate cookies. While I thought how cute she looked with cookie crumbs on her cheeks, I felt it was wrong not to inform Leon and decided to call him later.
"Bonnie, I don't want to be with Mom anymore."
Suddenly, Daisy said this while staring at the rim of her juice glass. The girl who had been happily eating cookies now had a troubled look, far too mature for her age.
"Why?"
"Because Mom gets angry easily, and she throws things at me, like the trash can. I hate it."
"The trash can?"
"I haven't done anything wrong. She says I'm in the way, tells me to get lost, and throws things. My teachers at school won't believe me either. I can't stand it." Tears were streaming down her face. It must have been very hard for her, as she continued to cry, and I spent the time soothing her back and offering tissues until she calmed down. Clearly, what was happening to her was not normal. Convinced of this, I decided to call Leon to see if he could come back and help. Stepping away for a bit where Daisy couldn't see, I pondered how to explain the situation to him, then an idea came to me.
"All right, this might work."
I murmured softly and dialed Leon's number.
"What? Daisy? Yeah, what did you say?"
Leon seemed quite shaken as he listened to the story, his voice trembling slightly. At first, he joked, saying it must be a prank, not funny, but as I continued, he believed me and listened seriously. When I shared my idea for a plan I had come up with, Leon agreed to it, saying he would take time off work to help.
"All right then, please take care of it. Don't worry, Daisy is in good hands."
I hung up, then quietly deleted the text from Sherry from my mobile phone. Looking towards the living room, I wondered if Daisy had calmed down and quietly went back. I should splurge a bit and treat her to something delicious tonight. With that in mind, I slowly returned. The school Daisy attends is a bit far from here, but I explained the situation to the school and arranged for her to take the bus. This way, carrying her heavy backpack, including her tablet, would be a bit easier. Planning to bill Leon for the bus fare later, I continued my work from home during the day. Daisy doesn't have any extracurricular activities, so she comes home right after school to do her homework.
"Bonnie, can you check my homework?"
I was surprised. Isn't that what teachers are for? But according to Daisy, it was different.
"All my classmates have their moms check. I always did it myself."
Realizing Sherry had always put herself first, I picked up a red pen. After checking her homework, it was time to prepare dinner. When I stood in the kitchen, Daisy followed, saying with her eyes, "I want to help. Today we're making meatloaf, so could you start by peeling the onions?"
"Sure."
Daisy was surprisingly quick at peeling onions, and she efficiently followed directions to help cook. I wondered where she learned to cook so well, but there was no time to ask as the meal was ready before I knew it. As these days repeated, we enjoyed our time together, and before we knew it, a month had passed. Looking at the calendar, I anticipated Sherry's call, and sure enough, it came.
"Bonnie, thanks for taking care of my daughter this past month." I'll come to pick her up tomorrow. What are you talking about?
I replied calmly. Sherry, who had been traveling for a month, seemed still to be at the airport, as I could hear boarding announcements through the phone.
Wait, what? No, what are you talking about? She's there, right? I left Daisy in your condo's garage. I haven't seen her. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. I sent you a text, so you know. I haven't received any text. Are you sure you're not mistaken? You're lying. I know you're lying. Don't play with me.
Sherry, seemingly panicked, screamed over the phone.
What are you going to do about it? I left Daisy with you. You're responsible if anything happens. I'll call Daisy to see what's up.
With a sharp tone, she angrily hung up the phone. After a while, another call came in, and Sherry was yelling again. Sherry tried calling Daisy's child safety phone, but not being able to reach her, she continued to panic.
Sherry, why don't you go home and calm down first? That's true. You're right. I'll go home now.
After that, there was a forgotten hang-up, and voices arguing could be heard, Sherry and presumably a man, but it was too far to make out clearly. The room returned to silence, ominously quiet as if before a storm. When Sherry finally came home, her footsteps thundered down the hall. Entering the living room, her face went from a demonic frenzy to a pale shock. It was because she found all three of us in the living room, Leon, Daisy, and me. Sherry's mouth moved as if to ask why the three of us were together, but no sound came out.
Sherry, I've heard everything from these two. And about that call earlier. What? I put the phone on speaker so we could all hear. I thought it would make it easier to discuss what comes next.
By the way, Daisy's child safety phone was turned off, so it was natural that Sherry couldn't reach her.
How could you do this? That's my line. I said I didn't know earlier, but we've been taking care of Daisy for a month. How could you just leave her at someone's house and go off on a trip suddenly? I sent a text about it. That's not the point.
Leon carefully chose his words and spoke calmly.
Let's all calm down. Daisy is here too. Sherry, it's true you left Daisy and went on a trip by yourself. Your attire and luggage look like you've just returned.
Sherry was dressed in a warm coat and stylish outdoor clothes. With lots of luggage, perhaps from shopping for souvenirs and clothes, her carry-on looked full. Without denying, Sherry started making excuses.
Yes, I went on a trip. I just wanted a break from being a housewife. The laundry, cooking, it's all the same every day. I was stressed. It's not too much to ask to go out with friends. Is this the friend you're talking about in these emails?
I presented several sheets of paper. They contained email exchanges between Sherry and what appeared to be her affair partner, discussing plans for their trip. Dating back to last spring and even on the day I took care of Daisy for one day. The supposed day trip with mom friends was a lie. Sherry covered her mouth as if realizing her mistake. Actually, a few hours before Sherry arrived, at Daisy's request, I had looked through Sherry's computer and found these emails in her mailbox. Daisy had noticed her mom frequently texting someone not her dad and suspected the affair. Her suspicion turned to certainty when she saw texts from an unknown man on her mom's phone while she slept. Also, when Sherry was on the phone, she could occasionally hear the other person's voice, but it wasn't her dad's voice. I heard from Daisy 6 months ago that Sherry was having an affair. I had been skeptical until Sherry suddenly announced her trip a month ago, but after checking the computer, I realized Daisy's intuition was right. You could see Leon was visibly shaken.
What have you done? I trusted you, and you leave Daisy with Bonnie to go on a trip for an affair?
Leon confronted Sherry with a trembling fist.
It's a misunderstanding. I was forced to go on that trip by him. Forced? You left your family for a month for that? Come up with a better excuse. I was threatened. Believe me, Daisy, you believe me, right?
Daisy, suddenly addressed, responded calmly and plainly.
Mom, you were so happy on the phone before you left. And you made me do all the cooking and cleaning while you just slept and lazed around.
Daisy glared with her lips pursed.
And you tell me not to stay up late, but but you'd go out at night and come back in the morning to sleep on the floor. Everything you said was inconsistent.
Hearing this, Leon pressed further.
Going out at night? You were partying? It's not like that. Daisy, stop talking.
I quickly showed Leon the photo on my mobile phone. It was a photo captured of Sherry, who was dressed up and heading out late at night.
Several months ago, I got a call from Daisy, and since I happened to be nearby, I took this photo, but I was surprised too. Where were you trying to go at that late an hour, Sherry? Oh!
She was confronted with the photo, and perhaps realizing she could no longer make excuses, slumped down right there.
I can't believe it. I can no longer entrust Daisy to you. Let's get divorced. I'll demand alimony. From now on, you're free to be with that other man.
Leon said so with his shoulders drooping and then turned his back on Sherry.
What? A divorce? You're kidding, right? Why? Don't you feel sorry for Daisy not having her mom around? What about you, Daisy? Come on, help Mom out. No, absolutely not. Bonnie feels more like a mom.
I felt very embarrassed as an adult to see Sherry cry to her own child, but Daisy brushed her mom off. While I was taking care of Daisy, I made time for her as much as possible, discussing school, hobbies, future dreams, and various other topics. Of course, cooking together was one of those things.
Sherry, don't worry. I'll make sure Daisy is happy,
I said with a smile, and Sherry hung her head dejectedly, saying nothing more. 6 months later, her divorce from Leon was finalized, and custody went to Leon. Sherry, dragged by her parents, went back to her hometown. The man she had an affair with, whom she met on the internet, disappeared as soon as he found out about the divorce, and communication was cut off. By the time she realized she was just played, it was too late, leaving her with a hefty alimony and child support bill. Her savings were far from enough, and she managed to make the payments by having her parents bear more than half the burden. However, that led to stricter surveillance from her parents, and she could no longer go out late at night. Moreover, the rumor that she got divorced and came back home without her daughter spread throughout the neighborhood, and she was met with cold stares when walking outside during the day, so she rarely left the house. Still, she couldn't remain unemployed forever, so she would have to re-enter society at some point, but what happened after that is unknown to me, Leon, nor Daisy. Leon and Daisy have moved out of their original home to rent it to someone else and are now living on a different floor of the condominium where I live. They plan to use the rental income for loan repayments and savings for Daisy. I've started visiting them almost every day. Leon, who was often away on business trips and couldn't be near Daisy, regretted not being able to pay more attention to his family and focusing too much on work, decided to change jobs. Changing jobs in his 40s was supposed to be a challenge, but his sales performance was excellent, and his communication skills were high, so it was not surprising that he could have held a position of some responsibility. Therefore, his job search did not drag on too long, and 6 months, he received job offers from 2 or 3 companies and starting work at one of them. I was surprised that Leon had such abilities, but what surprised me more was that he preferred outside sales at his previous company and gently declined promotion offers. It wouldn't be interesting to stay on the same company floor all the time. For that reason? But the new job is fully remote, right? Yes, but talking with various people is interesting in its own way. Most importantly, being with Daisy is the best. Daisy is still going to school with her light blue backpack. Moving changed her school district, requiring Daisy to transfer schools. Though it must have been sad to say goodbye to her friends and teachers, Daisy seemed surprisingly calm, even enjoying her new school life. Daisy, have you gotten used to your new school? I asked while making dinner together, and Daisy smiled. Yeah, I made a friend in the class next door. Already? That was fast. Daisy nodded shyly. Yeah, next time, I'm going to make meatloaf at their house. That sounds fun. Yup. Seeing her smile like a blooming flower made me smile too. Her dream is to open a restaurant. Thinking it's solid for a 10-year-old to have such a dream, Daisy shared her reason.
That friend, like me, doesn't have a mom who cooks, so she cooks herself. She said she wants to cook for people who don't have someone to cook for them, like us. Is that so? I hope I can be like that too. So, I'm practicing making meatloaf.
Her innocent laughter made me feel a complex emotion for a moment, but I quickly smiled back.
That's great, Daisy. Your meatloaf is delicious. I want many people to taste it. Thanks.
Seeing Daisy looking forward with such earnestness made her seem incredibly strong and shining. Her dream will not end in fantasy or delusion. I'm looking forward to the day when Daisy grows up and opens her restaurant.